Hello viewers, I'm your host Pratiksha Mishra with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's first talk about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent visits to Brunei and Singapore, which mark a significant expansion of India's strategic outreach in Southeast Asia. In Brunei, PM Modi's historic visit led to agreements on fintech, cybersecurity and long-term LNG supplies, while also celebrating a new direct flight route to Chennai. In Singapore, the focus shifted to enhancing cooperation in semiconductors, digital technologies and healthcare. These trips underscore India's commitment to its Act East policy and the Indo-Pacific vision, fostering stronger, more diverse partnerships that promise mutual growth and innovation in the years ahead. Take a look.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's international visits have played a crucial role in bolstering relations with numerous countries. His recent trips to Brunei and Singapore highlight India's dedication to deepening its connections with Southeast Asia. During these visits, Prime Minister Modi underscored the importance of Brunei and Singapore as strategic partners in India's Act East policy and its broader vision for the Indo-Pacific region. His engagements with these Southeast Asian countries are aimed at enhancing cooperation across various sectors, including semiconductors and hydrocarbons.
भारत की एक्ट ईस्ट पॉलिसी और इंडो पैसिफिक विजन में ब्रुनेई का महत्वपूर्ण साझेदार रहा है। भारत हमेशा आसियान सेंट्रलिटी को प्राथमिकता देता आया है और आगे भी देता रहेगा। हम अनक्लोज जैसे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानूनों के तहत फ्रीडम ऑफ नेविगेशन और ओवरफ्लाइट्स का समर्थन करते हैं। हम सहमत हैं कि इस क्षेत्र में कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट पर सहमति बने। हम विस्तारवाद नहीं, विकासवाद की नीति का समर्थन करते हैं।
During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's historic visit to Brunei, marking the first time an Indian premier has made a bilateral visit there, he and Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah agreed to elevate their 4-decade-old diplomatic relationship to a more advanced partnership. They discussed expanding collaboration into emerging fields like fintech and cybersecurity. The two nations also agreed to broaden their space cooperation to include satellite development and explored the possibility of long-term LNG supplies. Additionally, they signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate on telemetry, tracking, and telecommand stations for satellites and launch vehicles. The visit also saw the celebration of a new direct flight route between Bandar Seri Begawan, Brunei's capital, and Indian city of Chennai. India and Brunei have a warm relationship characterized by mutual respect and shared understanding on various issues. Their ties are rooted in a millennium of historical, cultural, and traditional connections. After his 2-day visit to Brunei, Prime Minister Modi travelled to Singapore to strengthen the strategic partnership with the Southeast Asian nation, following an invitation from the Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. During Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, India and Singapore signed memorandums of understanding to enhance cooperation in areas such as semiconductors, digital technologies, skill development, and healthcare.
Across this entire spectrum of the semiconductor ecosystem, we find great convergences with Singapore. And I think you will see a very rapid growth in our joint efforts in this direction.
PM Modi also engaged with a group of prominent Singaporean CEOs from various sectors such as investment funds, infrastructure, manufacturing, energy, sustainability, and logistics. He expressed gratitude for their investment activities in India and recognized the significant contribution of Singaporean business leaders in enhancing bilateral relations and fostering economic collaboration between India and Singapore.
It's very exciting, to meet with Prime Minister Modi in person. His leadership is exceptional. For the past, this is his third term, right? For the past 2 terms, you can see that India has become one of the major player globally, the 5th largest the economies in the world.
The relationship between India and Singapore is anchored in a deep and enduring history of commercial, cultural, and people-to-people connections that stretches over a millennium. This long-standing partnership is built on shared values and mutual approaches, aligned economic interests, and a common perspective on pivotal global issues. The political engagement between the two nations is both regular and robust, with particularly strong defense ties. Economic and technological collaborations are not only extensive but also expanding, underscoring the growing depth of their partnership. Moreover, the cultural and human links between India and Singapore are dynamic and vibrant, continuously enriching and strengthening their bilateral bond. PM Modi's engagements in Brunei and Singapore highlight India's commitment to enhancing its role in the Indo-Pacific region and fostering closer ties with key partners. With a focus on collaboration across diverse sectors, these partnerships promise to drive growth, innovation, and mutual benefit for years to come.
Let's now move to Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, where ad hoc employees protested demanding the release of their long-delayed salaries. The workers, hired temporarily across various departments, claim that salary suspensions have caused severe financial strain, affecting their families and children's education. They argue that despite the enactment of a law to regularize their employment, the legislation has yet to be enforced. This ongoing issue highlights the broader problem of job insecurity and disparity faced by temporary workers who often perform similar duties as permanent staff but without the same benefits or stability. A report.
The core committee of employees working on an ad hoc basis in different departments across Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir held a protest outside the Central Press Club in Muzaffarabad. The demonstrators displayed placards and banners with various slogans demanding release of their salaries. They reported that the suspension of their salaries over the question of merit has led to their children being expelled from schools and severe financial difficulties at home. The protesters also stated that while employees in Pakistan have been granted permanent positions, those in POJK are facing unemployment due to the government's failure to address their plight.
हम भी मेरिट के तहत ये मुख्तलिफ महकमा जात में भर्ती हुए हैं और ज़ाहिर हमें भी अपने घर से तकर्री आर्डर नहीं मिले हैं। हुकूमत वक्त नहीं आइन और कानून ज़ाब्ते के तहत हमारी क्वालिफ़िकेशन के मुताबिक हमें नौकरियों में लिया, हमें हमारी इंडक्शन हुई। तो ये कैसे मुमकिन है कि इतने साल गुजारने के बाद ये लोग आप कहें कि ये मेरिट के ख़िलाफ़ भर्ती हुए हैं? ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। पूरी दुनिया में आलिजा ये देखा जाता है कि क्वालिफ़िकेशन के साथ एक्सपीरियंस को बड़ी अहमियत हासिल होती है, इसको अहमियत दी जाती है। एक ये हमारी रियासत है जहाँ तजर्बे की कोई वक़्त नहीं है और वो लोग जो साल आ साल से शानदार खिदमात अंजाम दे रहे हैं, बेहतरीन रिज़ल्ट्स दे रहे हैं, उनको बेअक्तुमश कलम ये कह के कि इनकी तकर्री खिलाफ मेरिट हुई है निकाल देना, मेरे ख्याल में ये जुल्म है, नाइंसाफ़ी है।
In 2021, the POJK Assembly enacted a law to regularize the employment status of specific categories of contractual ad hoc or temporary government workers. Protests rose due to the government's failure to enforce this legislation, highlighting significant frustration among the affected employees.
कि 1991 से लेकर आज तक मुलाजमीन मुख्तलिफ वज़राए-ए-आज़म मुख्तलिफ हुकूमतें आईं, वो लगाती रहीं अपने अपने तरीक़ाकार के मुताबिक। तो इस वक्त मुलाजमीन की सर्विसेज जो हैं 30 से 35 साल तक लोग मौजूद हैं, कई वफ़ात पा चुके हैं, कई 60 साल की उम्र पूरी करके बगैर मराद के घर जा चुके हैं। इन सारी सूरत हाल को देखते हुए और चारों सूबों में जो कानून साजी हुई है, फेडरल में हुई है, इन सारी चीज़ों को देखते हुए गुज़श्ता हुकूमत ने एक एक्ट बनाया था 2021 का एक्ट। हम मुतालबा करते हैं कि वो 2021 का एक्ट वो बहाल किया जाए।
The problem of ad hoc employment in regions such as POJK is a long-standing and contentious issue. Ad hoc employees hired temporarily without permanent contracts face job insecurity and often receive lower wages than permanent staff despite performing similar duties. The lack of progress in resolving these issues has led to protests and advocacy efforts by the affected employees.
Time now for Asia This Week, the stories from across the continent.
New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon met with South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol in Seoul to boost bilateral ties. In the meeting, which marks the first time in 9 years that a New Zealand Prime Minister has visited South Korea, the two leaders condemned North Korea's nuclear weapons development and its military cooperation with Russia. Luxon and Yoon agreed to speed up discussions on elevating their relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership at a meeting in Seoul. Navy and Marine Corps from the United States and South Korea conducted joint amphibious landing drills off the coast of the eastern city of Pohang to strengthen their alliance's combat readiness. South Korea and the United States have regularly conducted the Sang-yong exercise since 2012 to enhance their defensive posture on the Korean peninsula and improve naval and amphibious capabilities. The United Kingdom's Commando Force also participated in the exercise for the second consecutive year. Japan's government spokesman confirmed that one of its citizens was in detention in Belarus. Speaking at a regular news conference, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi said that Japan's embassy in Belarus confirmed the detention of a Japanese man in his 50s on July 9 for what the authorities called a breach of local laws. Belarusian media said the detained Japanese national was allegedly involved in gathering intelligence on social and economic conditions in Belarus, the implementation of China's One Belt, One Road initiative, and the situation along Belarus's border with Ukraine.
Let's now move to Pakistan's Balochistan province, which is facing a grave crisis with the ongoing issue of enforced disappearances. Under the cover of night, students, activists and ordinary citizens are forcibly abducted by state authorities, leaving their families in desperate uncertainty. These disappearances are not mere acts of intimidation, but calculated efforts to stifle dissent and exert control. The government's failure to address these cases have drawn severe criticism, intensifying regional conflicts and posing significant risk for Pakistan's stability. Take a look.
In the rugged landscapes of Balochistan, a haunting shadow lurks behind the region's political strife and simmering unrest: the issue of enforced disappearances. Under the cover of darkness, individuals, students, activists and ordinary citizens are wrenched from their homes or workplaces, vanishing without a trace. These abductions are not carried out by mere criminals, but by forces cloaked in authority, the security agencies, intelligence operatives and paramilitary groups of the state. Families are left in a state of agonizing uncertainty, their pleas for information often met with silence or denial. The victims are detained in undisclosed locations, deprived of legal representation and contact with their loved ones. This clandestine operation is more than just an act of intimidation. It is a calculated strategy to suppress dissent and maintain control. In Pakistan's poorest province of Balochistan, these disappearances are not isolated incidents, but a pervasive scourge that feeds on fear and stifles the cries for justice. The region is witnessing significant protests and demonstrations, with activists and families of the missing uniting to demand the release of the disappeared and to highlight the ongoing human rights abuses in Balochistan.
ये लोग आकर हर हफ्ते यहाँ पर आकर बैठते हैं और इनमें इजाफा होता जा रहा है, ये कम नहीं हो रहे हैं। अगर मेरी आवाज बलूचिस्तान के कोने कोने तक पहुंच रही है, मैं तमाम लापता अफराद के लायकीन से ये अपील करती हूँ कि वो बाहर आए, अपने प्यारों के केसेस को रजिस्टर करे, पुरअमन तरीके से एहतजाज करे, प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करे।
Numerous activists, journalists and ordinary citizens have gone missing in Balochistan, often alleged to be abducted by security forces or other state actors. The government's failure to conduct thorough investigations or account for the missing has drawn widespread criticism. Reports of extrajudicial killings by security forces have further intensified distrust between the Baloch population and the state.
ये दो का पास फरेबी रियासत, फरेबी इसकी आर्मी जब मुंह की खाती है तो उसके बाद नियत लापता अफराद को फेक इनकाउंटर्स में कत्ल करती है। मैं आप सबसे गुजारिश करती हूँ, लापता अफराद के लवाकिन से गुजारिश करती हूँ कि वो अपने प्यारों की गुमशुदगी पर खामोश नहीं रहें, और इसी तरह जिनके प्यारों को अगर ये लोग फेक इनकाउंटर में भी कत्ल करते हैं, उसके बाद भी उनको आना चाहिए, उनको एहतजाज करना चाहिए और बताना चाहिए, इस रियासत की आर को बताना चाहिए कि ये किस तरह निहत्ते लापता अफराद को मार रही है।
In Balochistan, the cycle of enforced disappearances and human rights abuses has exacerbated violent conflicts between separatist groups and security forces. Ignoring these pressing issues could have a serious political and social repercussions for Pakistan.
Moving on. In Dhaka, thousands of students and supporters rallied to mark 1 month since former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's removal. The demonstration, mainly composed of Muslim male students, saw participants carrying Bangladeshi and Palestinian flags while chanting slogans demanding Hasina's extradition. In Bangladesh, the crisis continues amid doubts about caretaker government's ability to restore stability. Here's a closer look at the situation.
Thousands of students and their supporters took to the streets of Dhaka to mark the 1-month anniversary of the removal of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The large-scale event, which was called the March for Martyrs, honored those who lost their lives in the protest that led to Sheikh Hasina's ouster. The demonstration, predominantly composed of Muslim male students, featured participants carrying Bangladeshi and Palestinian flags. They chanted slogans like "The blood of the martyrs is our strength" and "Execute Hasina." The unrest, which resulted in over 1,000 fatalities, was initially triggered by widespread opposition to government quotas for public sector employment. People, primarily students, also assembled at Dhaka University campus, chanting slogans and commemorating those who had died during the weeks of violence. As they voiced aggressive and threatening slogans, the students called for Hasina and her associates to be extradited from India to face trial for the killings from the previous month. In Bangladesh, Nobel Peace Laureate Muhammad Yunus was recently thrust into the role of leader for the caretaker government following a period of intense violence that had severely destabilized the nation. Under caretaker administration, however, there are significant doubts about the effectiveness of efforts to restore peace and stability.
এই ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট থেকে আমরা একটাই আশা যে উনি আমাদের দেশে আমরা যে অধিকারের জন্য আমরা এই আন্দোলনে লড়েছিলাম উনি আমাদের সেই অধিকারটা ফিরিয়ে দিবে এবং আমাদের সেই অধিকারের ব্যবস্থা করবে যাতে আমরা আমাদের একটা স্বাধীন দেশে পূর্ণাঙ্গ একটা ব্যবস্থা পাই যাতে আমাদের সার্বিকভাবে আমাদের উন্নত করার জন্য।
The former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, has called for justice, demanding investigations into those responsible for igniting the summer riots, and has sought accountability for rioters, vandals, and perpetrators of violence. Recently, Bangladesh was plunged into severe political and social turmoil marked by widespread violence and unrest. This crisis, which intensified over several weeks, stemmed from growing discontent with the government and deteriorating economic conditions. The situation reached a climax when Hasina was forced to resign due to the overwhelming pressure from violent protests and demonstrations. In a dramatic turn, she fled to neighboring India, highlighting the gravity of the crisis and her administration's inability to manage the rapidly escalating situation. However, the removal of a long-standing leader has created a power vacuum, amplifying political instability. This instability has provided radical groups with an opportunity to recruit individuals who feel marginalized. Experts believe that such an environment can cultivate radical sentiments, especially among disaffected youth and extremist factions who may see violence as a valid approach to achieving their political or ideological objectives. The unrest has already exacerbated political and social divisions in Bangladesh, and attacks on Hindu communities are being employed to incite sectarian conflict and galvanize extremist elements.
With ongoing demonstrations and rallies, Bangladesh's future trajectory is increasingly uncertain. And with that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.